We are often taught the lesson in elementary school, don't judge a book by its cover. It's an important lesson because it teaches us to not allow uninformed assumptions to influence our lives. We received this lesson because we were impressionable, and our parents and teachers did not want unfair and inaccurate assumptions to limit us, limit our friendships, our education, or our sense of adventure. This lesson prompts children to maintain an open mind, be curious, crack open the book, and gain knowledge and perspective from its contents. Unfortunately, there are some who modify this lesson. Don't judge a book by its cover, except these books. And making these exceptions can be detrimental and pervasive. Don't judge a book by its cover, except distrust science textbooks because they're wrong about the origin of man or climate change. Don't judge a book by its cover, except avoid people with large body tattoos or people of a certain skin color at night. These exceptions not only prompt children to maintain a closed mind about a specific issue or group of people, but it reinforces children to depend on uninformed and unfair assumptions, a mentality that can carry into adulthood. These exceptions, I'm going to be calling them mental cages. And I call them mental cages because first, they inhibit free thought by limiting how we can perceive something or someone. And second, because they are very difficult mentalities to break out of. And today, I'm going to be sharing with all of you my personal story with mental cages. I was born and raised a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. In fact, I was a sixth-generation Mormon. My ancestor, Henry Lunt, was close to Brigham Young, an LDS prophet that even many non-Mormons know. Put simply, I was a quintessential devout Mormon. You can see that in this old picture of me from when I was younger, about to go off to church. You see, I attended the 3-hour church sessions every Sunday, the 2-hour youth group meetings every Wednesday, the 2-hour dances every other Saturday, and the 1-hour seminary each weekday during the school year. I fulfilled the young male Mormon stereotype, a reverent and subtly sheltered boy who dreamed of going on his mission and attending Brigham Young University. Unfortunately, I also fulfilled other stereotypes. I didn't know what a homosexual was, but I knew it was bad. I didn't understand evolution, but I knew it was a lie. And most important, I didn't really know why people left the church, but I was certain that it was for bad or wrong reasons. These ideas were mental cages that I had. Although completely unfounded in personal experience, I was adamant that they were true because I was told they were true by my LDS family, my primary teachers, my bishop, and even the highest-ranking members of the LDS Church, the prophet and his apostles. But these were not the only mental cages I had. I maintained a vast array of uninformed and unfair assumptions with few questions asked. And I only rarely asked questions because of the oldest, largest, and strongest mental cage that I had, the one that had me fear asking questions and having doubts. You see, LDS prophets and apostles, who are called general authorities, have said that questions are fine, so long as they're faith-promoting. But it is that condition that creates the negative impact that influences almost every other thought. And that is why maintenance of that mental cage is a high priority for the church. And in order to maintain that mental cage, the church creates numerous lessons for both children and adults. And these lessons come in one of two forms. First is the guise of aid. There's a belief spread about Mormon culture that those who leave the church have condemned themselves to loneliness, misery, and vulnerability to Satan's temptations. In the book of Alma, one of the books of the Book of Mormon, it says, "Wickedness never was happiness." And in the book of Mosiah, chapter 3, it reads, "The natural man is an enemy to God and has been since the fall of Adam, and will be forever and ever unless he yields to the enticings of the Holy Spirit and putteth off the natural man." These scriptures reinforce the idea that the church teaches you in the way that it does in order to protect you from yourself. The late Boyd K. Packer, an apostle that I grew up listening to, iterated multiple warnings to teachers of the church education system. And one of such warnings was the following. In an effort to be objective, impartial, and scholarly, a writer or teacher may unwittingly be given equal time to the adversary. Hearing this, I feared being objective, impartial, and scholarly. I was afraid that I'd be helping the goals of Satan himself, and I was grateful for Packer's warning in the same way that I'd appreciate a wrong way sign down a highway, because I genuinely thought that being objective, impartial, and scholarly was the wrong way. The second form in which the church arrives in order to reinforce the bars on that mental cage is under the guise of authority. There's a phrase in Mormon culture that originated from the church magazine called Ensign. The phrase, "When the prophet speaks, the debate is over." I heard this phrase many times in my upbringing, especially from teachers of primary and seminary. Dallin H. Oaks, another apostle that I grew up listening to, said, "It is wrong to criticize leaders of the church, even if the criticism is true." You see, devout members of the LDS faith do not take the authority of general authorities lightly. Questioning their authority in front of other members of the church can be social suicide, and it can get that member called into the office of their bishop and punished. I had to expel any doubt or any information that could possibly lead to doubt. I was not going to give myself the chance to ask questions because I was terrified of what could happen to me emotionally and spiritually. So to clarify, I was not just taught to judge certain books by their cover. I was taught to mentally burn certain books. I share all this with you so you can understand the indoctrination and inculcation I had to overcome, the cognitive dissonance that I had to endure in order to break free of that first mental cage, the one that had me fear questions and doubt, the one that contained within it the multitude of other mental cages that the church built. But I did not break out of that cage alone, nor do I think I could have. First, a high school teacher named Mr. Schroeder. Mr. Schroeder had a greater impact on me than any teacher or professor I've ever had. He was unparalleled in his ability to impassion youth, high school youth if you can believe it. He built his lessons around discussions that analyzed our assumptions and tested them. And he seemed to enjoy them because these conversations challenged the preconceived ideas that we take advantage of by rarely identifying them. And it was in one of these discussions that I learned one of Schroeder's many lessons. There is enormous value in conversing with people who hold an entirely different set of beliefs and values. And I took his lesson to heart, even though it was those conversations that inevitably lead to the type of questions and doubt that have no place in LDS doctrine or culture. In fact, it was Mr. Schroeder's lesson that led me to my other great influence, a simple yet amazing group of friends. You see, I went to the same elementary school as these three, and the same junior high school, and even the same high school, yet I never attempted to become friends with them because they were not people of my faith. I saw them more as a threat than a potential group of friends. But Mr. Schroeder's lesson prompted me to talk with them, and I grew very close to them, and I learned something important. Honest research should only harm lies. If I'm certain that the church is true, I should not be afraid to ask any question I want or conduct the research that I want. And if I am afraid that the church is untrue, shouldn't I be asking questions? Shouldn't I be researching? Now, I can see in some of your faces that these lessons seem basic, but to me, they were amazingly complex and difficult to reconcile with 6 generations of Mormonism on my shoulder and 16 years of indoctrination and inculcation. But those 2 influences helped me break free of that first mental cage, and after I did that, everything became possible. I began researching like my life depended on it because it kind of did. I had to know whether or not the greatest influence in my life was someone else's lie, and then whether or not I was fine with that. And I learned. I learned that, first, the church whitewashes its own history. Because although my childhood lessons explained my homosexuals and former members were bad, they failed to share Joseph Smith's criminal past, his teenage wives as young as 14, and that the true manner in which he translated the golden plates into the Book of Mormon, the keystone of the religion, was by placing his face into a hat. I learned that the church acts more like a corporation than a church with multi-million-dollar real estate investments around the world. And I learned about the church's marginalization of people of color, of women, and especially the LGBT community. And though I had learned more in those few months of research than I had in 16 years of membership in the church, I've never felt so uncertain in my life because I had no idea what was going to happen next. And then I found the ex-Mormon subreddit. The ex-Mormon subreddit is one of the largest online communities of ex-Mormons in the world. And it is first and foremost a support group for those who have just learned about the true nature of the church. The community helps adults who are unsure how to explain to their spouse what they've learned. It helps youth who are afraid they will be shunned if they leave the church, and it extends a hand of love and support to those who are severely depressed because the church was their central pillar, and that pillar came crashing down when simple questions were answered. The community helped me recognize that first, the church is not what it had claimed, and second, I could still be a decent human being in this world without being a member, and that took me months to accept. The community was even there for me the day that I sat down with members of my family and the bishop to have the conversation that I never, ever thought that I would have. I told my family that I was leaving the church in August of 2012. I do not wish to share the details of how they reacted, but suffice it to say, family relations were strained. Less than a month later, I returned to my junior year of high school to find that I'd been cast out by those who maintained the same mental cage that I once held. They didn't really know why I left the church, but they were certain that it was for bad or wrong reasons. I was once excited when a former friend approached me in the hallway after months of no recognition. and he spoke to me with a tone of concern yet contempt. Which sin did you commit? There are many ex-Mormons in the world who have endured similar and much, much worse experiences of leaving the church. I was fortunate enough to have cultivated genuine friendships with this group of friends. Friendships that I'll never forget, friendships that saved my life. I also became extremely active in the ex-Mormon community, writing reports and making connections that gained significant attention, all under the pseudonym Cageless Bird. 2 final thoughts. First, the obstacle to achieving curiosity is not always complacency with the world, but sometimes it is the existence of mental cages that inhibit curiosity. Curiosity of information, of life experience, and even of human connection. Second, I encourage all of you to identify your mental cages. Racism, homophobia, and an unwillingness to research are all mental cages that persist far more often than we're willing to admit. Do not let yourselves be limited by the unfounded assumptions that others have instilled, or possibly ones that you've built yourself. I strive every day to identify my own mental cages so I can approach the world in honesty, and my life has been better because of it. So I ask all of you, what are your mental cages? Thank you.